Welcome to the EQUAL-IST webinar on sustainability of gender equality plans and structural change measures in research. My name is Maria San Giuliano. I am from the Department of Computer Sciences at the University Ca' Foscari, and I am one of the supporting organizations providing gender expertise to our EQUAL-IST consortium in delivering their gender equality plans. This webinar is organized as part of a webinar series that we are delivering to support our research performing organizations in implementing their structural change measures. We have already covered few issues, starting with gender-sensitive language, attracting girls and high school students to enroll them to IST and ICT studies, and also more recently this month we had a webinar on enhancing female careers in these fields. We plan to continue with our webinars starting again from this autumn, between September and October 2018. Also, a very short presentation about EQUAL-IST. The project is funded under Horizon 2020, is really focusing on the computer sciences and information system disciplines. So we started by observing the well-known, very low, extremely low representation of women in these sectors, especially when it comes to higher positions in the academia. And women represent just approximately 9% of full professors in computer sciences. These four consorts. We have faculties and departments in IST preparing, delivering their gender equality plans in several countries, in 7 countries in particular. We have used quite a participatory approach, starting with gender assessment, a participatory gender audit, and also complementing this process with a crowdsourcing platform to really foster participation as much as possible in the design of tailored gender equality plans. We are now in the we are finishing the first iteration of our of implementing our GEPs, and our today's topic on sustainability of structural change measures in research is really very useful to our partners to shape the next phases of the project. We are going to refine and redesign the gender equality plans to get prepared for the second round of implementing the plans themselves, and therefore we really want now to get inputs on how to embed sustainability measures in this refinement phase of the GEPs wherever possible. We also have a specific task, which is task 5.5 on developing sustainability and replication reports that will be led by Ca' Foscari with contribution by VILabs, which is our project coordinator. So, as I said, I'm really now going to give the floor to our first speaker, who will set the scene for the good practices presentation afterwards. And please, as we are going to have the question and answer sessions individually, specifically after each presentation to make the webinar more interactive, please start typing them while the speech is still ongoing. So let me give the floor and briefly introduce to Maxime Forest, Maxime is a PhD and senior lecturer and researcher at Sciences Po in Paris, where he has recently coordinated the EGERA project, closed in 2017, one of the structural changes project similar to EQUAL-IST, and currently he is principal evaluator of the Supera project, recently started up. He has really published a lot on transfer of feminist knowledge, gender mainstreaming, and therefore we really expect to learn a lot from his presentation, titled Building Sustainable Change in Research Organizations, the Issues at Stake. Please, Maxime.
Yes, thank you, Maria. I will try to share my webcam. Does it work? No? Do you see me or not?
Yeah,
well. You do. Okay, and I will now try to share my presentation with you. So you should have everything now.
Yes.
Okay.
It works.
So indeed, I would like first to thank the EQUAL-IST project for inviting me to this webinar. It would be a pleasure to share a few experiences and views and insights with you. I would like first to to clarify from where I'm talking. Actually, Maria presented me, so I will not add anything to what she just said, but I've had this presentation with my experience as a structural change project coordinator for EGERA from 2014 to the end of 2017, but also from different perspectives. One, as a policy stakeholder, because I am involved in policy making on gender equality in France as an executive member of the High Gender Equality Council, also involved in policy evaluation, among other the field of research and innovation. And I will also feed it from my perspective as a researcher. And as Maria said, I have published especially on gender equality policies and on the politics of transferring gender knowledge in different types of organizations, especially universities. So what I will share with you is not the state of the art. It's not either a sum of good practices meant to be good for all. It's just a starting point for our discussion of today. Yet I should access this. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I would like to address is that when addressing gender equality in our organization and when implementing gender equality plans and strategies, we should frame it in a broader momentum for gendering research and the academia in Europe. Only in the European Union, there are about 1,500 universities and research performing organizations which at the moment are carrying out gender equality plans or strategies. And in various countries, about half of EU member states, this results from a legal obligation, either at the national or the subnational level. But in the UK or in Ireland, the Athena's One initiative, which is a private run initiative, has generated by itself nearly 500 equality strategies in over 150 universities and research performing organizations. So that means that this is a moment when not only structural change projects and universities involved in such projects are developing GEPs, but a high number of universities and an ever-growing number of organizations. Nevertheless, it is true that since FP7, the several generations of youth-funded structural change projects that have been launched have developed increasingly holistic, comprehensive approaches to the issue, kind of reflecting the shift of paradigm at the level of the European Commission from a fix a woman approach to a fix the institution approach, and this has contributed to set up a new standard in dealing with gender equality in research and the academia, and in setting up a gender equality plan and implementing it. But this does not mean that because they have created a new standard, gender equality plans implemented as part of your funded project do provide a full guarantee for greater visibility, accountability, or sustainability. And that's why we have together to ask the question how we can make change sustainable. Because even if they are better designed usually, if they are more comprehensive, externally evaluated, and of course supported with significant resources, the institutionalization and the sustainability of this project and of the gender equality plans that are implemented as part of it is still problematic. One of the first things that we can remark about it is that these GEPs remain often led in relative isolation. For instance, through establishing specific ad hoc mechanisms or working groups, which is fine at the moment of collectively designing a strategy, but might prove limited with regards to pervading institutional practices. Second thing that we should remark is that the action implemented as part of this GEPs remain often little known and little visible from the full institution. And there are projects where after 4 years of implementation, very limited number of people know actually about what is going on in the institution. So it does not mean that nothing is going on, nor that there is no impact on the organization, but it simply means that not everybody is involved, and that little people within the organization can actually refer to this gender equality plan, and for instance, held people accountable for its implementation or not. Another thing which is important is that gender equality and the gender dimension in science, which are fueled throughout the organization as part of these GEPs, are often left disconnected from those challenges which are usually well understood and tackled at the highest management level, like internationalization, international competition and rankings, entering the digital era in terms of pedagogical tool or research, and so on and so on. So these are typical challenges which are usually addressed by top management, and gender equality seems to be something apart from that, which is not part of this broader process of change, and that's also problematic. And as a result, from this seclusion, excellence is often opposed to mainstreaming gender equality because it is considered two mutually exclusive goals, and therefore mainstreaming gender appears to be at best subordinated, if not opposed, to pursuing excellence, especially in an international competitive environment. Another point is that although per se desirable, evidence-based policies can occasionally lead us to a sort of trap, because changing numbers can hardly be achieved within the time frame of such a project, typically 3 or 4 years. Changing the number of women being hired as researchers or being promoted to higher hierarchical and senior positions, this is something that typically you will hardly reach within such a narrow time frame. And nevertheless, often we are confronted with managers who ask for evidence-based policies, for quantitative data to support the mere fact to act on gender inequalities. So we have to produce it, and this helps us to design better policies. But we have to be aware that this can lead us in a sort of like U-turn where from it is difficult to get out. And nevertheless, we know about the basic success factors. We know it because we have now enough experience from all those projects, and we know what is required in terms of gender equality at university. We know, for instance, that that we need to carry out both quantitative and qualitative diagnosis to start up. We know that we need to mobilize and to transfer gender and feminist knowledge within the organization. We know also that we need the support from the top level management in order to build legitimacy for the actions to be carried out, in order also to create better accountability. We know, and that's an obligation when it's concerned the youth-funded project, that it is better to adopt a comprehensive view to the problem in terms both of issues and targets, but also of methodologies, so that we can address the full scope of issues related to the underrepresentation of women in particular disciplines, to the different phenomenon reflected by all those meta-apparat from the glass ceiling to the leaky pipeline that affect female researcher careers, but also to address a more content-related aspect of gender with regard to knowledge production. And we know, of course, that we have to monitor and to evaluate the changes that we pursue through the implementation of gender equality plans, so that we can learn from practice, improve in the course of their implementation, provide correction wherever it is necessary. But are these basic success factors sufficient? The experience tends to tell us the opposite. So there are two aspects I would like to tackle. The first is the notion of politicizing changes toward gender equality. Make change toward gender equality in research a political issue for the organization. A political issue does not mean that it has to be a contentious one, but it has to be something which is definitely part of the political reflection of the whole organization. And the second aspect I will address is the institutionalization aspect. So let's start with this issue of politicization. From our experience, notably as part of the EGERA project, which casually was led by a political science organization. So this is also something that helped framing the issue from our perspective. Politicizing gender equality requires to map formal but also informal decision-making process, so that we exactly know where decisions are taken and how they are being taken, because it is where we have to actually bring the missing gender perspective. We have also to assess any available windows of opportunity for change. What do I mean by window of opportunity? Well, it can be plenty of things. It can be, for instance, a specific moment in the life of the organization when it stages its organization, its decision-making processes are being rethought, are being changed, and that's the right time to introduce a gender perspective. This can go also through opening direct channels of communication with our top management. Because this allows for actually sharing the progress, for sharing the issues, the resistances also, and for ensuring that those in charge of impulsing change are not trapped somewhere on a sideline of the organization, but they are actually communicating directly with those taking the ultimate decisions. This will help to create and strengthen all along the project or all along the implementation of a gender equality strategy the accountability mechanism. Accountability toward the organization itself, and accountability toward external actors like policy stakeholders at the national level, like the European Commission, of course, or toward other type of stakeholders. This can go also through building a network of like-minded managers, which actually entail creating alliances within the organization with view to mainstream not only a gender perspective, but also the very objective, the very goal of reaching gender equality and greater gender balance. And we should also strive for engaging the world community with pursuit change, not only a part of it, not only one specific collective like a senior academic, for instance, or like the top administrative management, but also students, but also administrative staff, technical staff, and other kind of stakeholders within the organization. So these are basically enabling conditions that we can build within our organization to make gender a political issue. But there are also more strategic aims to be pursued in that direction. One of them, which is core, for instance, to EQUAL-IST, is making language political, striving towards a more gender-sensitive internal and external communication, both visually, online, or in the way of communicating within the organization between people. Another important aspect that we actually realized over the course of EGERA is that gender equality and the gender dimension in research have to be brought to the same level of strategic challenges, such as international competition with regard to training and knowledge production that oppose gender, that oppose knowledge production organization between each other worldwide. The issue of digitalization, which considerably change the way knowledge is being produced and transferred at universities and research performing organizations. The financial autonomy, which is greater and greater, and that require to secure funds in order to further operate and expand, or the professionalization of research management, which is perhaps the least developed of all these challenges, but has a lot to do with making an institution more gender aware and gender sensitive. And this ultimately requires to challenge the current definitions of academic excellence in order to make it more objective, but also more gender sensitive and inclusive. And this is definitely not the easiest part of the work that is to be done. So I would like to give you just a couple of examples coming from the EGERA project, for instance, about what we meant by engaging the world community. We meant, for instance, targeted awareness and training actions for all the components of the academic community, from students to the top management, through the mid and intermediate level management, both academics and non-academic, mobilizing students so as to make them both responsible of the changes toward equality that we wanted to implement, but also accountable of part of these changes, because change are also to be brought in relations between among students, and either way they contribute to the work of the organization. It also went through empowering staff and their representatives, that means social partners, by providing new data and new knowledge about inequalities and potential discriminations, and by widely disseminating it so that the problems are known, are shared, are collectively understood, so that we can act upon it. And it went also making sexual harassment and gender-based violence a concern for everyone inside the organization, not only in terms of awareness and reporting, but also in terms of monitoring cases and following up actions that are actually being taken to prevent this kind of behaviors. And another example is about building accountability. what we meant by building accountability took actually operated at different levels. At a peer level, for instance, among services or units within the organization, within the university, or with other universities of our size and scope, was to activate benchmarking so as to improve situation with regard to gender equality. Ultimately, it can even eventually came to go to up to naming and shaming, because, as it is said often, it's all about reputations. We all pursue as organization to secure the best reputation, to attract the students and skillful worker and collaborators, and therefore gender equality and bringing the gender perspective in research can be part of this politics of reputation. At the top-down level, one of our main commitments was to make our commitment toward gender equality public and widely known. So in our case, this took the form of getting our director involved in the E4She campaign as one of the 10 global champions for gender equality in the university world, and also to make sure that these commitments were widely broadcasted and reported in national press. Of course, depending on the size, scope, history of the organization, this type of public commitment can be of very different nature. But the very objective and what is relevant here is to make it actually public. This also goes through a sharing commitment with top managers and with the mid-management level, so that all this commitment and goals with regard to gender equality are widely known and collectively endorsed, so as to strengthen accountability. And the ultimate goal, finally, is to mainstream a culture of equality, so that everybody within the organization feels accountable to a certain extent for achieving the goals of this policy, and understand that he or she owns part of the solution. At the bottom-up level, we also use social media as a record of the pledges and commitments, and also as a way to measure support for those actions that we implemented through the gender equality plan. And we tried as much as possible to make of students, and to a lesser extent of social partners, advocates for the change. So the ultimate result we achieved was that the students are those we actually control whether the policy is implemented or not. And new students arriving to the organization, to the university, are trained and informed about what we have done, and this is the basis from which they start to build their own recommendations or claims, so that we improve our policy further. And I would like to finish this presentation by addressing institutionalizing change in a briefer manner. We can think that change toward gender equality can be driven from the margins, for instance, from the places where feminist and gender knowledge is being produced within the organization, and certainly can also be driven through pedagogical and policy innovation. But power structure needs and the routinized practices also need to be engaged, and this actually can be achieved through different channels. By conducting gender audits of institutionalized management, training, planning, governance, but also evaluation mechanisms. By integrating a gender perspective in an institutionally sensitive way, that is a way that responds to the specificities of the organization in terms of institutional construction. By providing adapted solution and policy recommendations. And also, and perhaps above all, by taking advantage of any current institutional update process. That's what I meant, for instance, when you change the status of your organization. That's the right timing to bring the gender perspective in. when you change the full mission statement of the university or the organization. That's the right timing to bring the gender perspective in. When you change the overall process for recruiting academic member of their organization, that's again the right moment to bring this gender perspective in. And also by pursuing gains for institutions in terms not only of reputation, but also of rankings, of labels, like gender equality labels in the workplace that exist in some EU member states. So, to conclude, planned actions should be devised from that experience so as to be sustainable in terms of knowledge. The available knowledge has to remain available in the long run. In terms of staff, so that it is possible to have enough people and human resources to conduct change. Of course, in terms of funding to the greatest possible extent, and of monitoring and evaluation, so that there is a record which is kept of these actions. And investment should be realized so as to build and mainstream in-house practical gender knowledge and making it a professional asset, for instance, through permanently available gender training, both compulsory and optional, through establishing networks, for instance, of gender focal persons, or through using certification processes. So, and of course, by widely communicating about all gender equality related achievement within the organization. So these are only a fraction of what could be said about this notion of sustainability and institutionalization that actually comes from our experience, and that can, of course, be further discussed. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Maxime. It was really extremely interesting to listen. I see that, yeah, it was really a great presentation. I wanted to ask our audiences whether there are any questions for Maxime. We can take a few minutes for this. We suggested that the questions shall be typed in the chat box. Actually, there were no questions. I had one particular question for you, Maxime, and is about, do you see any added value in including a sustainability plan as an action to be delivered already as part of the gender equality plan itself before it is concluded?
Yeah, well, there is an added value, certainly, but there is more, maybe more important than that, is that when you design the gender equality plan or the gender strategy itself, you actually design every single measure, or at least the way each single measure or action will be further developed in the course of the project and in the course of the plan, asking yourself whether it can be sustainable or not, and having like control measures in order to make sure that it will be to the greatest possible extent sustainable. Of course, there are a few actions in a gender equality plan that are not meant to be sustainable because they are meant to start the diagnosis or to disseminate about the project at a specific moment of its existence. But nevertheless, the best way to do it is to design any action with view to make it sustainable. So is to adopt this strategic institutional vision from scratch, being able to challenge institutions, but first knowing how they work and how you can actually change it in the long run.
Thank you. It was really clear. We have another question, and it is about what you referred to, including students in evaluating the situation at the institution, but also, if I understood it correctly, they are part of the accountability process, monitoring, right, of gender equality measures. If you can explain a bit better, please.
Yeah, actually, we don't have like much record about how it will work in different organizations. I have I have experience gathered through JIRA from especially 2 or 3 organizations, including my own, Sciences Po, where it has been a key aspect of the process of change over the last few years. And also I have some examples from other EU-funded projects like Genovate and others. Of course, this does not apply to all kinds of organizations, including those which are tutorial ones, because you can have mostly PhD students or so. But when you are a standard university, I would say, definitely involving students to different kind of activities, training, awareness raising, and so on, can actually I stopped my webcam because it seems my connection is getting worse. So because yeah, involving them at every step, especially through awareness raising, training, or dissemination action, actually helps a lot communicating about the change you want to bring to the organization. It helps a lot to make the top management aware that there is a social demand behind that, and that it goes beyond a few academic researchers or project leaders. And it has definitely expanding the field of the change to the social media and to all pedagogical activities in a way that actually considerably, drastically increases the numerical basis for the change to be conducted, and hence create greater accountability. At the end, if everything goes well, those asking for changes are the students, and they open the possibility also for staff and for academics to actually join this process and to also speak for themselves.
Thanks a lot. It was really what you referred to as broadening up the involvement to the entire academic community, and not just to the elite, let's say, academic staff or top management. Thanks again, Maxime. I would now give the floor to our next keynote speaker and introduce you to Dr. Thomas Berghofer. We will now, let's say, listen to his presentation after Maxime, whose presentation is clearly embedded into his background in as a political scientist. We will hear what it can entail promoting structural change measures in research from the perspective of a physician. Actually, Thomas has studied physics and astrophysics in Marburg, and then continued at Berkeley, working as a researcher in astronomy at Berkeley and at the Max Planck Institute. And then at the University of Hamburg. Later, he became a science program manager in the German research funding system, and he is the coordinator of another structural change project funded in Horizon 2020, which is the Genera project. Thank you, Thomas. You can take the floor and share your screen, and eventually the webcam if you have enough bandwidth.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I just pushed a few buttons. I hope you can see the presentation now. So can somebody give me some feedback whether this is working?
Not yet, apparently. Let me see if I can do something. No.
So I see myself here. Then you are okay.
Let me just see 1 second, please. Oh, something is happening, but not yet finalized. I cannot find you in the. Babis, can you maybe help us, because I can't find Thomas in our participants list. so to attribute to him the presenter role.
Sorry, Maria, the rest of us can't see it actually.
Okay, that's perfect. So it's only my problem. I will listen to you. Please.
Thanks a lot. Then I will start. Yeah, we got started with the Genera project about 3 years ago. It was in September 2015. And so the title is for today is From Physics for Physics, Experiences from Almost 3 Years Genera project. I will tell you what it means from physics to physics in a minute. So I'm, as you heard already, I'm working here in Hamburg at the big physics facility at DESY in Hamburg. And yeah, right, gender equality. The good thing is, why do we do gender equality? Of course, there are some legal reasons, and here you can find what United Nations is saying, European Commission, and what we have in Germany in our law. So all good reasons to go for gender equality, but they are all legal reasons. And the question is whether there is something else. So is there, for example, a gender dimension in research? That is something that's very fashionable in the moment, to talk about the gender dimension in research, or how to include it in research. And yeah, in basic research, you need to think about this a bit more carefully before you come into before you get the idea. Yes, of course, remove the question mark. There is a gender dimension in basic research, and if the answer is yes, there is a gender dimension in research, of course, then the research community itself should make sure that all sexes are adequately represented and involved. And if you are talking about a field that is traditionally underrepresented by one or the other gender or sex, then it means something. You should go and check that you have a more and more gender equal surrounding. Yeah, what you see here is this famous website in Stanford of this institute that's also funded by the European Commission on Gendered Innovation. Yeah, here you can find some examples for gender dimension. So GENERA stands for Gender Equality Network in Physics in the European Research Area. And here you can also see the link to the website of our project. There are a lot of information that we have compiled can be found. Right. So I don't want to go into this here in too many details. It's just to show that we are one of these very 4 projects going for gender equality plans for research performing organizations, research funding organizations, of course, to do this systemic institutional change. And the third method of Brussels is to implement gender equality plans. Right. We got started in September 2015, as I said some minutes ago, 3 years lifetime. That's where we are running out. End of August this year. It was quite a lot of money that we got, but it distributes well over Europe. We have 13 beneficiaries, 11 physics-related organizations, and 2 professional support organizations which have a special role in the project. One is for the internal evaluation, the other organization is for the outreach and valorization that we think is very important to have this project. We were growing over the time running the project. We are now having 18 observers and 3 associates. If you look at the map, you find organizations distributed all over Europe, or most parts are covered. Some countries we haven't managed to find interested parties so far, but I don't want to go into many details. It just shall impress you that we have worked a lot in increasing the number of interested parties in what we are doing. And I will come back to this at the very end of my presentation that these observers and associates, they all don't get funded by this project. They guide us in some direction, or we can make use of them just to see how can organizations that are not deeply involved in the work of the project can take advantage of what is developed within the project. So here we have to work in the next months and analyze lots of interviews that we have made with these organizations. So what they have taken home for their own organization while being observer in our consortium. Right. The title started from physics for physics. So it is the genera approach from physics for physics. Physicists, yeah, are somehow interesting people and sometimes difficult to stand, but human beings, I would say. Yeah. So what makes a physicist? A physicist is trained in problem solving. So when there is a problem, then the physicists think, oh, let's solve the problem. So defining gender equality as a problem helps in this respect. And so let's solve the problem. This was the idea of genera. And another important thing to realize is that physicists like to measure. So sometimes you see them playing with things, and here we thought, oh, why not putting gender equality and see whether we can get them to measure things. So, and measuring is rather important for gender equality because yeah, you can place a lot of activities, measures, but if you don't know whether they have an effect or not, this is my major critique on the whole system, that we don't know the real effect of most of the measures, then you don't know whether it's worth to do it or not. So here in genera, we saw that major institutions in the science field, or here physics, should commonly address gender equality from the scientific point of view together as experts in structural change. So it was the first time bring together these two different communities to do something in physics, right? So measuring, I said, is rather important. Yes, of course. The data collection is usually done in institutes by HR departments. So when we wrote the proposal, we had lots of ideas, and the little sketch on the upper right corner shows you what we all wanted to study, some field dependence or differences coming from the different regions in Europe and career steps, etc. But when we first approached our HR departments, it was really shocking to see that there's only a minimum of data available. And it became clear that genera needs to define a standard. Many HR departments said, please let us know what shall we collect in the future to become better in this respect, and that we can measure better things in the future. So this was one big aha in our learnings. Then we said we need to come together in we called National Gender and Physics Days. This was a whole series going from one country to another. And lots of information was flying towards us during these national get-togethers. So another way of collecting or measuring, so to speak. We had lots of interviews. So there was one series with male and female scientists that are working in our institutes. And the idea was to get a bottom-up view on the field. And this is, of course, rather important to, what you have to take into account when you do such a project. And I mentioned the professional support organization, the Joanneum Research from Austria, who did ex ante, ex post evaluation with interviews with the management of the participating institutions. So this information that was collected gave a kind of top-down view on the institute. So having both the bottom-up and the top-down view, it almost creates a complete picture of what is going on in the institutions. And rather important information to tell you what kind of measures are the preferred ones in the institutions, the individual institution. So yeah, we went out, talked to our HR departments, collected data, and here I show you an example of the first data collection. You see data coming from 10 different institutes in our grouping, and it describes what is going on in physics very nicely. You have 4 different career steps: PhD students to the left, and postdocs, senior scientists, and leaders, so top-level management. And in physics, the usual scissor diagram, where you have crossing lines, so with starting with the majority of females, and then leaky pipeline is at work and it breaks down, is a bit different here in physics. They are well separated, except for our Romanian partner, IFIN-HH, which is in the moment to be checked. It could be that it's a mixture of physicists and some other scientists coming from other fields. That's why they are sticking out a bit. Or I should explain, you see from the bottom to the top percentages from 0 to 100%, and for each institute you find a line for females and one for the males. And altogether it adds up to 100%. Right. And you see lots of differences here, which tells you a lot about the attractiveness of fields. For example, IAC is an organization on the Canary Islands, astrophysics. So it's, we think it's very attractive for females. That's why they are sticking out a bit to the top. It's still under discussion what's going on in Poland. It's today the University of Jagiellonia in Krakow. They are having no PhD students, female PhD students anymore, and the postdoc numbers for females is also pretty low compared to others. And the rest is somewhere in the middle range, somewhere between of the order of 20% or so. And you see that some organizations at the highest level, the career level, the leaders level, then they are splitting up. And for my organization, it's you see the daisy red line. Unfortunately, we don't have a female in the directorate, and this is a kind of tradition because this lasts already 60 years. So we are all waiting for the time when this will be changing, hopefully soon. Right, this is just the first look at the data. There's so much information in here. We're still working on this. Right. Next slide. Yeah. So we are following a kind of recipe. We thought it's rather important to have the management involved. So we put them in a governing board. They are the supervising group here, and to have them really attached to the project. And each organization implementing a gender equality plan has to have to nominate an implementation manager, and they worked in a group together. So the first thing they did was to analyze what is good practice, and studied literature and collected what the organizations are doing already. And these measures made up a toolbox. I will come to this in a minute. So the idea was that we can feed in measures that especially support a culture of mixed teams in physics. So yeah, I cannot go through all these measures, but you find this toolbox online at our web page. So then the implementation of gender equality plans is an interesting issue. We have written a guidebook, or here we call it roadmap, and all together we support each other in developing individual gender equality plans and implementation process. So the whole thing is, the story is internally evaluated by your Neon. And what we thought is, yeah, this project is nice to have, but during these 3 years, we will not see some impact of our doing, working together. And we decided or defined in the project to stay together for, on the long run, network and gain visibility on the one hand side, become a big European movement, but also to be able to follow what was the impact of the Genera project on the long run. So here you see, I think this is stolen from here tool or Gear website from EIGE, the steps of implementing a gender equality plan. I think we all know about this. I don't have to go into details. So it's a learning phase, analysis phase, design phase, implementation phase, monitoring, adjustment, and finding evaluation. So the Genera toolbox. So it's filled with now about more than 100 measures to improve gender equality in physics. It structures in 6 fields of actions and 8 target groups, and describes in detail the implementation of measures. And it is classified in concerning the difficulty and implementation as easy, advanced, or well advanced. You see to the right the fields of action, so the structural integration of gender equality, engaging leadership, flexibility, time and work life, presence and visibility, gender inclusive, gender sensitive organizational structure, gender dimension, research and education. Right, this looks very theoretical so far. Let's have a quick look at what is in this toolbox. Here you see a table of the first measures that you find in here. Here just given the information for which field of action a certain measure is working. So first one is 120% support grant. You get some extra if you are having family business at the same time of doing your PhD or postdoc. It has an impact on flexibility, time and work life, and perhaps on gender dimension research and education. So this is a way how to read this table, and this is just the first 20 or so. And you see that the table is built in several colors. Columns, but engaging leadership is a real issue to work on, to define measures in this respect that are helping to improve on engaging leadership is a real issue. And yeah, this is what we also found out while doing our project. So I'm not sure how much time I still have, but I wanted to introduce to you a bit this Gender and Physics Days idea. It is a day, or it's also defined as a measure in our toolbox to raise awareness on the importance of gender equality. So this is also what Athena Swan and the Institute of Physics is doing with the, what's the name of this project? But they go and visit institutes and just say, hi, we are your gender equality tracking organization or whatever. So this has always a great impact. So these days should also create a forum to discuss gender equality issues within physics and the European research area, and also allows to get an overview about what is going on in the respective country, and so on. So, right, we have been all over Europe, as I said, the Netherlands and Germany, Switzerland. We had a nice day at CERN, in Italy, Austria, Romania, Spain, France, Poland. So all the partners that are involved in the project had to do such a day. You find information on these days behind this website. Here you see myself and my colleague Lia Lang in Italy. Right. These days were all interesting. We got a lot of sayings or interesting contributions. I put together some of the outstanding sayings. So here's some citations. So the mailer said, I thought that external factors are responsible for the gender imbalance. I learned today that it's mostly internal. So another male said, yeah, what happened during the last 20 years? It's still 90-10 male, female at a higher level. If excellence is the only criterion that counts, I managed to become a professor. This is what female professors sometimes say. And I appreciate very much working in a gender mixed team led by a female professor. Already the language used in our group is much nicer. That was what the male said. And contradicting that excellence is the only thing that counts, here's a statement. I managed to become a professor. I personally experienced sexual harassment and never expected such a tough and stony way to get into position. So there's also something other that plays a role, not only excellence. Right, here's a picture or some drawing from Gender and Physics Days. I leave it to you to check it later on. Of course, it says creating connections between physics and the world. It gives us a hint to really go for a network. So, in the future of us, the Genera network. I'm coming to the end of my talk, and so we want to. So the good question is why to stay together beyond the project lifetime. Of course, it's the long-term monitoring of the progress. We want to maximize the impact of Genera and want to find others who will make use of the material, share the knowledge and expertise, and bring together the gender equality supporters within physics. The driving force, yes. And a network you can form among individuals, but here we want to go for a network of physics-related institutes and friends institutions or institutions and things that can make use of this. So how? It's a bit a question. This will be defined in the Memorandum of Understanding, which we are working now on. And on the 20th of June, there will be a meeting in London to discuss this in detail and show it to the outside world what we have in mind. Right, here's the short summary, what we have done in Genera. So assess the status and gender equality in the partner countries, supported partners in preparing and implementing their gender equality plan, raised a lot of awareness on gender equality, involved many interested organizations in the project, and as I mentioned earlier, observers, they give us some, are important to understand how Genera material can be applied outside the group of implementing partners who do not, observers do not get funded, so they come on board on their own funding. And so this is the case for all of us after the project is running out. So, yeah, we are preparing.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Thank you very much. Really, my suggestion is that we really give the floor straight away to Professor Tulia Gallina-Toschi, and then merge the question and answer sessions at the end of her presentation, because we have run a bit out of time. So 1 second. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly introduce Tulia. Tulia is a professor at the University of Bologna. She's a coordinator of a research group on instrumental and sensory analysis of food. So yet another disciplinary focus on food innovation for sustainable development. But we have to say that she's also directly involved into shaping the University of Bologna gender equality policies, as she has been coordinating the committee on gender equality and equality of opportunities for an entire term until 2017, and she's nowadays deputy rector for well-being at work at the university, and furthermore she's the coordinator of another Horizon 2020 GERI project, which is the Plotina project. The floor is yours, Tulia, and thank you for accepting our invite again.
Thank you. And I don't know if I can share my video. Do you have...
Yeah, we can see you.
Can you see also the presentation?
Not yet. Babis, can you see her presentation? Let me, okay, let's, no.
Not really, but I have given permission rights.
Sorry?
You have the permission, right? So just click on the icon where you see the screen.
Yes.
So you have microphone, yeah. Click on it and you will take the screen. There we have it. Please go ahead.
Okay. So my presentation is always on the sustainability, and the key is how to tighten the pipeline in a durable way, how to manage when the projects are closed, are ended. So can you see the next slide is correct? Some starting of something? Okay. So I want to say, I want to underline that nowadays the gender equality is again particularly at risk. There is a social and political evidence that this has no boundaries. It's not a question of, for example, of North and South, political parties or specific religions. The lack of gender equality is and remains a global issue. There is no real topography of the gender inequality, but the gender inequality, it is pervasive. This is an important starting point if we want to consider also the future. So it's not even that even if we have done a lot of efforts in the direction to make, to include something in a permanent way, this it has not been achieved yet. So what works against this fact of being permanent, of having a real sustainability of the gender equality? So what works against the full realization of gender equality plans? One fact is the formal perception, even now, of the gender equality. In many cases, it is perceived as something polite, like the welfare, a question of politically correct. And I must underline that the politically correct now is not particularly fashionable at the moment. So we need also to be very careful in terms of what is the changing environment. Then we have a problem of gender fatigue. So sometimes in the institutions, you can have something like, oh, again, with this old gender issue. So it has not been solved yet. We have the need to speak about it. And this is much more diffused when data are not available. In many institutions, okay, a general question can be raised, but if are not available data to be shown in case someone is saying that, so this old question, but in this institution in particular, is a big institution, is present into an EU framework, so we do not need this. If you have data to be shown, it can be very useful to answer this kind of remark. Then the lack of knowledge, yes, and awareness, first of all, of women in many cases. For example, at the University of Bologna, we decided one of the actions that was realized by Plotina and the Committee of Equal Opportunity was to genderize the language. So having the female names for professors, researchers, and to suddenly change in the website all the roles, introducing the genderization of the language. Yes, this action obviously was appreciated by many people, but in some cases, as I think Thomas showed something like this before. In some cases, some women said, it was so hard for me to become a professor. I don't want to be, at this time of my life, of my career, a female professor. So even the awareness of female sometimes is something that we need to consider. Then there is the problem of ancestral lack of female team spirit. So a real lobby and a real interdisciplinary network. When, for example, I see in many cases during political votes, how is the strategy to reach a final agreement, the fact of having a gender equality is not really something that is felt important. How can I say that as one of the first problems for women? So in many cases, gender equality is felt as a prerogative and a subject. For example, a subject of gender or human disciplines. When this is not, when a good interdisciplinary network starts to be created, something different is obviously occurring. Then we have a strong resistance linked with the competition. So there is a subtrack of constant opposition, the fear of women, and particularly we need to understand that this starts to be hard when, as now, we have difficult to have progress in the careers at the university. We have a lack of resources. So in these cases, the problems start to be not anymore formal. How to foresee, obtain the sustainability of the gender equality plan. So considering it at an early stage of the project, I would say at the drafting time. So inserting measures of sustainability as a key of the impact. In these cases, the sustainability should be included in the project and should be really evaluated by the Commission, by the evaluators. So the problem of sustainability should be somehow solved at the time of the evaluation of the projects. I reported here also some findings from the Gender Equality Plan Project Cluster event that was held in Brussels on February of this year. And so you can see some notes. So how to manage, what can I do, what can we do when our GEPs have ended? So can we imagine their lasting effects? How can we maintain what we have implemented? So some points are reported in this slide. So it is important to secure, to have as an impact a budget for the future. So, for example, in case of Plotina, the University of Bologna, for example, we started with a budget of 5,000 euros, and now the new committee, also given that Plotina gave importance to this committee, has 5 times the starting budget for each year. So this is a budget that the organization actually is providing each year for the Gender Equality Committee. Another fact is ensure an annual measurement, and I would say publication, so transparency, the dissemination, communication. The people need to see the situation of the gender equality of the institution. So ensure this annual measurement and also stick. I think that Maxime before was speaking about isolation of GEPs, little known and little visibility of GEPs. So this was a problem also for us. So stick with the strategic documents of the institution. So we need to find a way to have an insertion that is permanent. For example, I'm not anymore the president of the Committee of Equal Opportunity, but I tried to put there some sticks in a way that this is a problem of the other people that are coming. Share the tasks, share the benefits, the responsibility with key actors. Also this fact of the key actors, also Thomas said, is extremely important. For example, for the key actors is always a problem of external evaluation, both national and international. So link with national and international ranking documents. So it's not only a question of being politically correct, it's a question of the performance of institutions. So link with ranking documents. Another fact is insert the GEPs, so the gender equality plans, but also the some single actions into the strategic documents and the strategic documents, regulations, statute. So the sustainability is, on my opinion, really here. If the institution has something that remains in a permanent way after a gender equality plan. So the people is actually changing, the project is not anymore in course, but something every year is mandatory to be done. And in this way, the measures remain into the strategy of the institution. Here you can find some example of the development of the gender equality plan into the University of Bologna. In this case, the rector was just changed at the time, and this was really lucky, because Clotina started with a new governance, so obviously the course was much more rapid. And for the rector of the University of Bologna, was extremely important to insert the strategy of the Sustainable Development Goals into the strategy of the Unibo. So we decided to stick, so to insert the gender equality plan within these strategic documents, as reported, for example, here. Here are reported the synergies that we were trying to intercept. Then, what else? Other solution, mapping the GEPs. So the EU actually gave fundings for many GERI4 projects, I would say. And so it's absolutely needed to map the institutions that have actually implemented gender equality plans with this funding. This is really a good opportunity to follow. Rewarding the GEPs, for example, in the next program, imagining measures to reward the GEPs, to make this linked also with other programs. You know that we have a part regarding the gender issues into the projects to be evaluated. Maybe we can add something more specific related with those institutions that have implemented action or GEPs or what else could have and a good evaluation of something. So to have to stick with it, and also to rank the GEPs. So in this way, the university that have these kind of measures can be more visible. And again, this could be not anymore only a question of politically correct, but is a question of performance. So also to summarize, keep a memory of what works. So a logbook, something like a logbook. I must say that we do not have to reinvent the wheel every time. So we have the age website. We have many best practices that are experimented at this time, and other that are adding for the project in course. Having a logbook and also yes, a memory of what works. Then in each institution provide a permanent gender equality committee or office and consider delegates in the department sticking the key actors. So the delegate, the risk of having delegates is something, again, formal. So we have the delegates, the question is fixed, but it's not like that. So these delegates should be in a way, the director itself or someone who is very near. So it should be a problem of the governance of each department. And also a brand, a reward, such as the Athena Swan, could be something useful for Europe. Obviously, is also this kind of network, if we want to say, or mark can be formal. But anyway, also, if it's linked with ranking, with the performance of each institution, with the evaluation, I think then that it can link with the excellence or strategic challenges, it was said also before. And one of the most important things, on my opinion, is to measure the gender equality in a permanent way, easily. So not we do not need a difficult approach. But we need to work to harmonize the way, have a mandatory publication of, for example, a gender annual report for each research performing institution. This is really hard to be achieved. So in some cases, especially in Italy, we see that those that have started this path, and now is also the ministry is interested to go ahead, are those that have had financed projects for the gender equality plan. So, but not all, not only in Italy, also in Europe, really agree to publish their data. Why? Because the data, these data are not fair, are in general are very evident. If you open the gender annual report of the University of Bologna, you can realize that is something that anyway is not, how can I say, promoting the situation, but I don't think it's different in other research performing organizations, and especially it's not different in those that do not want to publish this data. Evaluate and experiment new real-time indicators. So at the end, the hard time to realize a gender annual report should become very simple, quick, and just the data can be shown in real time. So there is not also the need to say every year we do have to do something. It's something that now we are managing big data. So if it's just a question of deciding, then in time, in the next time, to have real-time indicators will be easy. And require specific measures in GEPs for the next work program. No more requiring or suggesting the implementation of the design and implementation of a general plan, but asking for specific actions. For example, the mandatory publication of gender annual report, the mandatory publication of the GEPs. So something should be done for the communication in a mandatory way. Otherwise, the institutions are, in a way, could happen that they are taking money, but then afterwards support research performing organization to develop and publish their own gender equality plans. Even small institutions, so even small financial supports are useful to develop some action, to even to publish an intention or something, a start. And finally, but not finally, because many other considerations could be added, reflect on how to sell and promote the gender equality. So to imagine a gender equality with an higher TRL. So in that way, to really stick the gender equality through communication, training, and also some products. Some products are strictly linked to promote gender equality and to insert it into the mission of a research performing organization. So this is it. I'm here to I thank you, and I'm here to answer eventual questions.
Thanks a lot, Tulia. It was really comprehensive. I'm really interested that you touched upon the issue of power and competition on limited resources. That's basically very important in influencing resistance to gender equality, but also there were quite many areas of alignment between what you were saying and what was also raised by Thomas between on the measurement issue and the importance of continuing and keeping gender equality achievements monitored, made transparent in a simple way, which was also connected to what Maxime was suggesting us to do when he referred to accountability. But also from your speech, what I would also retain was really the indication of very concrete, safeguard a budget for making gender equality actions sustainable. So I would ask our participants if they have any questions, either for Thomas and Tulia. I was asking in the chat a few minutes ago. And thank you again for very interesting presentations. Thank you for accepting our invite and sharing your knowledge and experience. Thanks again also to all our participants. We will make the recordings of this webinar available on our YouTube channel. And if you would like to stay in touch, just write to our email address and we can register you to our newsletters. Thanks again and goodbye.